interesting, like a genuinely interesting usage of this song, and it is impressive that they were like, well, we need this and we need this live version of it to use here.
See, and I thought that song was very interesting also, because when it came on, I was like, I don't think that this matches. I don't think this matches at all.
It does also break the time period, because it's like the original, like the Kate Bush version is not from 1988, and the Maxwell cover is from like the mid 90s when he did his Unplugged. So it's kind of like, I do have like a willing suspension of disbelief with soundtrack cues at times when they do break that kind of like, so much of this is dedicated to the time period, like the songs at the dance, or the use of that MC Light song when they're doing kind of like the basketball run, like the girls coming out for the game. But this is, it also happens at the end too. Both uses of music that I was most impressed with break that kind of the confines of like year it's taking place, year was released, and you just kind of have to let go of that. And I was willing to let go with this, but I was also kind of like, it's such a, like, I just wanted to cry, but also I was like, this is supposed to be maybe romantic or like a big thing for them, but also I'm just so sad, and I don't know if they're sad too right now.
Right. Yeah, it's such an interesting emotional spot to be in.
Yeah.
But I will say, I do also appreciate the very responsible use of getting a condom.
Yeah.
You never see that in lovemaking movies or sex scenes or anything like that. You never see somebody getting out a condom and actually taking the time to put it on.
And also, she didn't have to ask.
She didn't have to put it on either.
Shout out to feminist icon Quincy for taking the initiative.
Yes, for being responsible. And we need more of that. Like, we need more of that, like, representation in media and stuff like that to show, like, how to have sex responsibly, especially for people who are having sex for maybe the first time or new to it. And that goes for not only like straight heterosexual sex, but also for like LGBTQ sex and stuff like that. Like, how do you have safe sex? Because nobody's teaching it in schools. So,
well, first you need to listen to Maxwell, and then your body will know what to do.
It tells you need to be sad, and then
be sad, be safe. There's a line, there's the refrain of that song has like, there's a line where it's like, all the things we should have said that we never said, all the things we should have done that we never did. He looks at her in that moment with something that, like, there is kind of like this longing and this build up to this happening that I thought again was like a very impressive kind of like actor director choice. And shout out to the soundtrack supervisor, whoever secured the rights to that Maxwell joint. Like, good on you for getting that one in there.
Absolutely.
All right, I've steamrolled so much, and we're only into the third act of this film.
Oh no, yeah. I also had a comment about him putting on a condom really quick. I feel like it adds to the realisticness of it. I don't know if that's the word I use.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because there's no like romantic way to put on a condom. Nobody looks hot putting on a condom. So, again,
it's like, hey, baby, you want to see how sexy this is?
Just someone fumbling with the wrapper. It's like, I almost got it. I'm just like, hold on, just hold on.
We're almost there.
Hold on, let me unroll
sitting
this.
there.
You like the unrolling action?
Oh gosh. Alrighty, so yeah, we're on our third quarter. So this is 1988 to 1989. Monica and her college basketball team are in training. It looks like she's struggling a bit. And she's mentioned to one of her teammates that she thinks that the coach doesn't like her. And at a practice, Monica gets in trouble for posing after scoring a shot. In the locker room, one of her teammates tells her that that's what she gets for trying to show off and to make her look bad. And that's when she tells Monica that she is actually sloppy seconds, that they were actually done recruiting, and that the only reason she's there is because the other girl got pregnant. So
burn.
Yeah, that was very harsh.
And usually you don't hear the term sloppy seconds in any other form than like somebody being the other woman. So
yeah.
I was really surprised to hear that used in
sloppy seconds.
in this context. I was like, oh wow, you've really gone for it. Okay.
I was very confused at first when she said that. I thought like she had some dish on cue, and I was like, oh, where's this going to go?
A bit of a reach. Yeah, a bit of a reach with the usage.
So in cues, Monica tells him about the incident at practice. He ends up telling her that she has nothing to prove to anyone and that eventually she'll probably just be known for being his girl anyways.
Then they play strip basketball.
No, they
play strip basketball.
Yeah.
Iconic moment.
The best part is like he's losing, perhaps on purpose. And then at one point in time, he's gotten to the point where he's completely naked and she's like, where's the D? And she turns around and he's like, right here.
Yeah,
right here, baby.
I the setup for that, I was like, oh brother, get this guy out of here.
So there ends up being news coverage of the school's basketball team. And I just wanted to comment on, I don't know if the guy that they were interviewing was he a coach or something, but his enthusiasm and energy reminded me of like one of those car salesmen.
He's a college basketball sportscaster. So that was his gimmick, was talking like that. And when he popped up on the screen, I was very like shook by how obnoxious that was, but that was like his thing. And Roberts was so relaxed. She was like mad young and it was very relaxed. And then he was like using a lot of catchphrases and it was very jarring. One of my original notes was like, we could have done without him being
very much so. He's like, still, everything's gotta go.
And for somebody, for people watching this now, for people who did not grow up like adjacently aware of like college sports, it is very kind of like, who the fuck is this fucking guy? And so I like just tangentially am aware of figures of like the 90s, 2000s, so I knew who he was.
Because Celeste and I are completely oblivious.
Like,
I was like, we're just like, okay.
Yeah.
That's what happens being 40 gets you, is that you kind of you know these kind of washed references that people who are slightly younger are kind of like, what is this?
I will promise you, I wouldn't know that anyway. Like I don't watch sports for the most part.
I don't really either. It was just kind of like being alive during a certain time period. You were like aware of things, whether it was kind of like important to you or not.
Yeah, just in the zeitgeist.
Yeah. The basketball was so big in the 90s with like the Bulls, and I grew up in Illinois originally, so I was just kind of like aware of things relating to professional basketball, regardless of if I was like really into it or not. So that was tangentially anyway. The game coverage.
Yeah, for the most part, Arizona sports is just known for sucking until recently. So
I wouldn't know.
I specifically, like, I just found out that the Arizona Diamondbacks, were actually good this last year. And I turned to my husband and I was like, the Diamondbacks are good? Since when?
And it's your time to be like a bandwagon fan and you're going to start going to games.
No, I invited Celeste to a baseball game once.
Yeah.
I'm very much a people watcher. I have absolutely no idea what's happening on the square. Gotcha. No idea.
Yeah. I'm there for the overpriced drinks and snacks. I feel like we did make some laps during the game because
definitely. I'm not somebody to sit in my seat the entire time
for 3 hours while stuff happens.
Oh no!
Now that it's 3 hours, before it was until the cows come home. You never know. Like,
oh no! So we get a montage of practicing their games and their practices. So in this, we see Q seems to be thriving and Monica seems to still be struggling a bit. And then Q and his dad are out for drinks and he keeps going at that. He wants him to focus on his education. And then he casually mentions a paternity suit of some girl claiming he's her baby daddy. Like
the way he's like, you're going to avoid the mess I'm dealing with now. Yep. And I was like, what does that mean? What? And then he's like, That ain't my kid. It's like, wow.
I love that.
President David Palmer, you could never. Come on.
He's got, when Q asks him, are you sure it's not true? Like, his dad has the audacity to be like,
I know.
You doubt me?
How dare you?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, all right. Well, at least you have the balls to actually ask me.
That is such a weird dynamic that they have in that scene.
Yeah. And then, so Q goes home to visit his mom. And of course, he finds her outside crying. So then, because his dad said nothing's going on or nothing happened, of course, he tells his mom that. He says she has nothing to worry about. And that's when she pulls out photos from a PI she hired, proving that his dad, in fact, did have an affair.
I think a lot of this, like, between Q and his dad is because, like, Q has always idolized his father and, like, his sports game and, like, his career and everything like that. And, like, he never knew that there was anything wrong. He just idolized his dad.
Yeah.
And so when he comes to see his mom, he's like, don't worry about it. Dad says there's nothing wrong. We have to believe him. And then his mom's like, I don't know about that. And then Q's like, why would you say that? You're always telling me don't believe the tricks. And she says, well, I should have been telling your father not to get into some tricks. And then she pulls out the photos. And this is where Q's world comes crashing down. And I always come to relay this kind of thing to that time as you're becoming an adult, when you have to realize that your parents are people. Your parents are human beings.
Yeah.
And they make mistakes. They are just human, and so on and so forth. And they have flaws. Even though we love them and all of our lives, we've idolized them in some way, shape, or form. But there's like a whole different dynamic when you have to realize that they're humans. And so I think this is what's happening in that moment for him. Like, everything's crashing down.
That is also something that he then doesn't ever really understand how to grapple with or process through the rest of the movie, even into the final act when he is like playing in the NBA. His relationship with his father is still very contentious, and he never really came to terms with like that moment when he realized that his father was not as great as he always thought. So again, it's like, it's explained a little bit, but that's another kind of like their dynamic could have been expanded upon at times, I think. But then we'd have like a 16-hour movie with all these like plot threads that I want just explored everywhere.
It should have just been a series.
It's like, just turn it into
been a good series, actually. Yeah. So then Q tells Monica about his father's affair. And during this conversation, she's kind of looking at the clock and she's kind of implying that they go back to her room. And it's because their coach has a curfew on them. And so this comes up later, which is why I wanted to mention it. He tells her, you know what, it's fine. I should be alone anyways. So she ends up going back to her room. And then we've got scenes that are cutting kind of back and forth of both Q's and Monica's games. They've kind of swapped. Monica's team wins. Q's team ends up losing. So before, when Q was thriving and Monica wasn't doing so well, they kind of switched places here. After Monica's game, her coach calls her in to her office to let her know that she'll now be starting her at point again, which I'm assuming that is a position, and tells her, she mentions that she's been going really hard on her and she finds it weird that she's putting her in this position. And that's when her coach tells her that she only goes hard on her players that have potential. Later on, Monica and Q meet at a party and she ends up catching him flirting with another girl. She asks him if they can finish talking about last night when she left. But at this point, Q is drunk and he kind of just starts acting like an asshole. So he says he's just going to go back to his dorm. When he arrives, he finds his dad sitting in his dorm and he tells him, he knows he messed up, but at least the kid is not his.
Are you sure about that? Get Maury Povich on the line.
Right. When Q responds, lucky kid. He tells Q that his mom got pregnant at 19 and forced him into this marriage, even though she knew he wasn't ready. And at this point, his dad tells him about all the girls that come along with being in the NBA, and that I don't know. I found it very odd. Basically, he's just like, it comes with this lifestyle. And basically at this point, he's just implying eventually it's going to happen. Infidelity happens within this lifestyle and career choice, which I felt like was kind of a cop out on his end.
Very much so.
And that's when Q decides to tell him that he's actually going to drop out of school so that way he can go pro. Monica goes to visit Q and tells him she noticed that he wasn't at the game. I think he mentioned that he had a meeting of some sort.
Always an excuse. A meeting,
right? Like father, like son. I had a meeting.
I do find that it is unfortunate that Quincy is so upset that his father has cheated on his mom, but yet he is doing literally the same thing in this situation with Monica. Yeah. It's just kind of like, I don't know if he really understands what he's doing.
Right. Like, how can you call the kettle black, sir?
Yeah. It is like, it's just like again, kind of like, a lot of levels again to unpack with.
So then the woman that he was flirting with at the party, she shows up casually, just like, hey, ready to go, like nothing. So of course, Monica gets upset. She leaves. And then later that night, Q is waiting for her outside her dorm and tells her that they need to talk. I think another one of my favorite lines. He tells her, I took the hoe to Burger King, but at least she had time for him. At least she had time for me. So in this point in time, he's referencing when he was telling her about his dad's infidelity and the moment that she had to leave because she had curfew.
It's not like she didn't want to spend time with him. And he knows about curfew. Like, that's not a foreign concept to athletes.
I get that it's like a plot device to get them to like reach a breakup at this point, but it was kind of like it seemed very sudden to me, and it was kind of like he was upset. She was like, I can't stay out very late. Can we talk in my room? And he was like, no, we can't do that. We need to talk right now. And she was like, I'm sorry, I have to go. And from there, it was just kind of like, he's like, well, now I'm going to do all these very reckless things and end this relationship. And it was like a 48-hour period. It just kind of seemed like very fast and somewhat like finding another girl so quickly seemed very unexpected. But maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, the lead up to this is just kind of like, it seemed to be moving at such like a breakneck pace. And then it just like ends, this third act ends with their like freshman year where they're breaking up.
I will also say though, it kind of makes sense when you think of the fact that they're like 19.
Yeah.
And their brains are not fully developed. And they're not thinking rationally. They're not thinking, oh, let me go ahead and do some breathing exercises. Let me go ahead and do some stress management. Let me like take some time away. They're just thinking, okay, I got to do this shit now. I got to do this right here, right now. So for a 19-year-old, a freshman in college, the second that the shit hits the fan, this kind of does make sense in in some way.
Yeah.
Is it handled well? No. But it is one of those mistakes that makes or breaks you and does pivots your life in some way.
Yeah.
And we all have to make those mistakes and own up to it as we get older. So I think it is an example of that.
Yeah. Also, plus, like, I feel like it was building up to it a little bit too, because he already has fans. He already has girls coming up to him. He already has
there was a moment
autographs.
A girl comes up to him and he kind of handles it very poorly when they're like leaving class or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's like, am I chopped liver? What am I?
Yeah.
So yeah, he basically tells her that she wasn't there for him when he needed her, and that all she cares about is basketball. Which I'm like, sir, you're both in the same You're both in the same career.
You're dropping out to go to the NBA.
Yeah.
You care about basketball also.
Yeah.
How do you get off
Yeah.
telling her that she's not allowed to care about basketball? Like, how rude. It's one of those things where it's like he just wants his needs to come above her needs, and he just wants somebody to cater to him. Also, is how I feel about it.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but that's
No,
how I'm reading it.
Yeah, like before when when she talks about her issues on her team, he kind of just says, "Don't sweat it. I understand if you can't handle the pressure." And then he pokes fun at that. She's just going to be known for being his partner, but I think that's genuinely what he wants and how he sees their future panning out.
Yeah.
So yeah, he dumps her. And then, but he says that he still wants them to be friends. And so,
Classic move. Classic move.
So in case I want you later, like I want you to stay around.
Big 19-year-old confused energy there.
Yeah.
that does not happen. We got text on screen going into fourth quarter in Barcelona, Spain. I had no idea how big basketball was out there. That was shocking.
International basketball for both men and women is huge.
I'm not gonna lie, I missed the Barcelona Spain bit, but I knew that they were talking in Spanish, and so I thought they were in Mexico. And
you know what? I did not hear Spanish accents. Like it didn't. Yeah, I can see why you would have thought it would have been Mexico, because I'm like, oh, I understand them perfectly. I did because I remember when we were in Spain, my mom and I could not understand half of them because of the dialect, because I'm so used to Mexico Spanish, and I was like, what? So
is that a continuity error, perhaps intentional by filmmakers?
I think it's the lack of Latino
casting.
Yeah, that anyone who speaks Spanish at this point, we're just desperate for a Spanish speaker. We don't.
Well, and then when we talk about Italy a little bit later, and then I was also confused. I was like, okay, I know that they were speaking Spanish, or at least I thought they were speaking Spanish, but I know that Italian and Spanish are very, very similar, but I understood all of it. Now I'm very confused.
You're like, where are we?
I will say the fourth act, because so much time has passed, because it does take place in 1993, and it is kind of just throws you into Monica's world, which is very isolating. And she does feel very out of place because she doesn't speak the language. A lot of it is revealed through expositional dialogue, though, in terms of being like, you are here, I am here, and your family is back doing what, like, so I can see why it was like very jarring, especially if you are like familiar with the languages, and it's like, oh, that's not what someone from that area would sound like at all.
Well, and then the other thing is too, like, if they went to USC, like in California, like you get familiar with Spanish. So the fact that she doesn't know any of it, I'm like,
and also like later on,
weird.
She meets up with a girlfriend for like dinner then. And she mentions that she's been there like 7 years now. And so I'm like, how have you not picked up on any Spanish? So yeah, Monica is playing for a team in Spain. There are posters of her in the streets, so it must be big. And then here's when the coach is giving this whole like speech in the locker room in Spanish, of course. And so Monica asks a teammate to translate, and the teammate just says, oh, the coach said to give the ball to you. That's
again, there is humor in this movie if you look for it.
Exactly. It pops up here and there. Yeah. So then she runs into her old teammate, Sidra, and they go out for dinner.
And this is the girl who threw shade at her, who was like, you're just sloppy seconds. And she ended up taking her spot after she had an injury. Yep. So the fact that they met up, they're like, oh, let's let water under the bridge.
So Monica asks her at dinner if she ever thinks about going back home. So Sidra tells her that they treat them like Hollywood stars out there, but it doesn't get any sweeter than this. But yeah, as you said, like she's very isolated. You can tell she's homesick.
Yeah, like in that scene where she's in her apartment and like she's just sitting by the window and like the TV is on. It is very kind of like, that's even before she hears the news that like Quincy is injured and she wants to go home and visit him. There is kind of like this terrible longing that, like, I feel like she probably thought that this was like the best option for her, and she probably has been miserable the entire time, is like what the implication is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she mentions with her friend that she hasn't been with anybody.
Yeah.
And then that's when she mentions Italy. Yeah, she's like, those Italian boys, they love Black women.
They love all women. From my experience,
yeah, you can comment on that.
All women. The 2 months that I lived in Italy, my roommates couldn't leave me alone for 30 seconds before some Italian man like cruised on up by me, and I was like, "Hello," and then they had to come and yank me away.
That's amazing. So Quincy's father is at a bar watching his game on TV. And in this game, that swing cue ends up injuring his leg mid-game. His father goes to the hospital where he runs into his mom, where she tells him that it's bad. He ended up tearing his ACL.
So I have thoughts and commentary on this.
Okay.
Because I asked Richard, my husband, about this. Because I know that an ACL tear is a common thing, happens all the time, but at like today, it's not career ending. But the way that it's said in the scene, it's like career ending. It is like a death sentence at the way that his mom says it. And so I was asking Richard about it. I was like, is an ACL tear career ending in the NBA? And he's like, no, not today. Like a lot of people actually come back stronger and they work better. And so then I asked him, okay, how about in the early 90s? And he's like, the early 90s? Absolutely. Like they didn't figure out how to fix the ACL until like 2000. And I was like, okay, good to know.
Also, what is the ACL?
There's like a band that connects your knee to the muscles in your like calf area.
So if you tear it, would it make a cracking sound?
No.
Because in the movie it did. Did you hear that?
I wanted to point that out, is that it
Yeah.
seemed like him fumbling a landing on doing a dunk and coming down too hard and there being a cracking sound was not how you would tear an ACL, but what would happen when you did. Additionally, I feel like because he was like a backup player and had been like shuffled around a lot between NBA teams since trying to go pro, that tearing an ACL when you are like a nobody is career ending. Like regardless of if you could come back from it physically, he is probably going to like be let go from the team, is what the implications I think from all that are.
Yeah.
There's another nameless bench warmer just waiting to get in.
But yeah, when he came down, so I don't know exactly how tall Omar Epps is, but he's not that tall. Like even in no, I don't know. He looks like he might be 5'10", maybe. I don't know. I feel like we should do some research on this.
5'10". Shout out to my short kings. That's what Google said.
Short king. Love it. So he's like 5'10". Like a regular basketball rim is like 10 feet high. So for him to go from 5'10" to drop down an additional 4 feet 2 inches, that's a pretty far drop. But yes, then he drops and he falls on that leg and it makes a crunch noise. And I'm sitting there at first, I was like, oh, he like busted a tibia or something like that.
That's what I thought too. Like,
because that's what it sounded like. And then when they say it's an ACL tear, I was like, ACL tears don't sound or look like that. I'm very confused.
It's not confusing too.
I asked Richard also, I was like, what's the most common way to actually tear your ACL on the basketball court? Because I don't think you can from falling. And he's like, oh, most of the time it's from like a pivot. It's like when you go to turn.
That was what I thought too, was I was like, he just came down too hard. I was like, that doesn't tear something usually.
So I was very confused, but so I wanted to provide that feedback because I went and I asked an expert, my regional expert here.
Oh, goodness. So his dad during this encounter, asks his mom how she's been. And she says that she's happy and that Q won't want to see him. He goes in and checks on
It
Q
also looks
anyway.
like she's remarried.
Yeah, there is like a man, a nameless man.
She looks like a
that
brand
she's
new
with.
woman. Yeah.
She got her hair cut.
blossomed.
Yeah.
And it is not a good haircut. I am here to say that is not a good haircut. I was like,
I don't think it's
What
a good
is
haircut,
that?
but I feel like it suits her. I thought it looked good on her. It was a style.
I didn't care for it, but that's my own personal.
Divorced basketball wife energy coming through on that haircut.
Oh no. So he ends up checking on Q anyways. He leaves him with that he's smart and that he's always been a better ball player than he could ever be. And he knew that. But all that he wanted was for him to know that he does have options in life. And then Monica also visits Q in the hospital. They start off with, I think they mentioned how many years had gone by since they've actually spoken. And it was quite a few years. He tells her
it was 5, I think.
5 years. I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I get the impression that he leaves college in 1989. And so then it's roughly 5-ish years later. Or like, I assume they weren't on speaking terms after breaking up. And so it's kind of like, regardless of when she would have graduated and when he would have left, yeah, they haven't seen or talked to each other in like 4 years for sure.
It's been a hot minute. But
Yeah.
he mentions that he's tried calling a few times and he asks when she's going back. And that's when she tells him that she actually plans on staying and giving basketball a rest, that it's just not the same anymore. She's not happy where she is. She doesn't have family or friends out there. He just responds with no, and that is when they are interrupted by Tyra Banks.
Shout out to Tyra Banks. Legendary performance.
Gorgeous.
Literally. At the time, was she a model? I want to say she was,
Yeah.
but
Yes, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't think she was booted from modeling until she started America's Next Top Model because somehow she had gained too much weight to be a model still, which is awful. She was still a size 1, probably.
Yeah. Like you couldn't
So
have
dumb.
any ounce of body fat or else you were considered
know.
a plus size model, which I'm sure wasn't even a thing back then.
Makes no sense because what are boobs? They're nothing but that.
Oh, well, models don't actually have boobs. They put like tons of padding. I think I was watching like some Victoria's Secret documentary. One of the models mentioned that they have like, they put on 3 bras and they make it look like one to the point where it adds padding and adds what little boob they do have to give it a lift.
Wild.
Time to do a sub podcast where y'all do a deep dive on the pitfalls of the modeling industry.
Oh,
I know. We need to do like so many other like side conversations.
right? So then Q introduces this woman as his fiance. So of course Monica is very taken back and just wishes them the best situation.
Yeah, that exchange was incredible, honestly.
Yeah, it was rough. So Monica goes home, of course, to her mom, baking in the kitchen. And while she's baking, she tells her that Q is now engaged. The mom ends up letting her know that Q's mom had like a barbecue at some point, and so she was able to meet her, and that she thinks that he can do a lot better. In that moment, Monica asks her, what she should do. And I think that at this point she was expecting a different answer, but the mom just responds, find out where they're registered and send them a gift. So they end up getting into it a little bit, not a little bit, a lot of it, actually, I'm sorry. And
quite a bit.
Yeah, this is kind of like the culmination of like the tension from the opening, like leading up to this explosion now. Yeah.
Her mom tells her that she knows that she's ashamed because all she is a housewife. And Monica says that's not what she's ashamed of. It's that she recalls a specific moment when they were younger and her mom spent hours slaving away in the kitchen and her dad just shows up with a pizza and that her mom says nothing. And she says that is what she was ashamed of. And so she gives her a big old slap in the face.
Then they continue to kind of deconstruct the rest of their relationship over the years about how they view one another and how they really wish that they could have had a closer relationship, and how her mom gave up so much of her career because of the fact that she got pregnant and so on and so forth.
And there is really no resolution also, which is like fascinating. And it was like, again, kind of like that is very realistic in any conversation, but especially with like when you have a like difficult dynamic with a parent and like a lot of things have come out, there is never like a clear kind of like, hey, we're going to be good, right? Like, it is just like I get the impression that Monica is still living at home also when she moves back. And so it's just like, I imagine things in the house are a little difficult, but that's just kind of left, like it's just kind of left there as like out in the open, but there's no like nothing that I think they both realize that they can't fix things really. And so it's just kind of like the mess that it's always going to be.
Well, I think there's some resolution to the idea that you can't change the past, but understanding you can tweak the future.
Yeah. It kind of feels like it is what it is situation. Their relationship is what it is. But
perfect relationship to have with your parents.
Yeah. And also I think moving forward, because Monica does mention that she never went to any of her games that she recalls, like of all the games she went to, she only went to 2. And her mom was like, that wasn't my thing. That was your father's thing. I wasn't into that. But she's like, no, it was important to me. So I think there was some clarity there for them that they can move forward with. And hopefully that'll help out their relationship. So, but yeah, they don't really get into it anymore later on. Not that much, at least. And then we've got another little montage of Q in physical therapy. And Monica is getting a new job at a bank where her dad works. And
love a nepotism hire.
Yeah. So Monica comes back from work and runs into Q, who's staying with his mom for a few weeks while his fiance is out of town, apparently. He mentions that there is only 2 weeks left till the wedding and that he's actually thinking of going back to school. And he continues to ask her why she's quitting basketball, but she tells him to just let it go. So at this point, Monica's sisters had a baby, so she came to visit with the baby. And her mom do share another little moment sitting outside, and that she tells her that she's always admired the fight in her, and that when she told her that she thought Q could do better, she was talking about her. And later that night, Monica goes to Q's bedroom's window and asks him to come out. And that she finally professes her love for him. She tells him that she's loved him since she was 11, and that the reason that she doesn't love basketball anymore is because he is what was missing.
So,
and yeah, go ahead.
I'm very confused by this because she loved basketball before she even met him. She loved basketball when they weren't in a relationship. Like, I'm so confused.
That is a very good point that I had not considered, is that she can play basketball, did play basketball adjacent of her time with him in any regard. So for her to say that she doesn't enjoy it anymore because they aren't together or in any kind of communication it is an interesting kind of like the deconstruction of these two characters, like, and the discovery and reversal, especially at the end, it is a romantic movie. So you do need to get them to this point, but it does not make a lot of sense given what we know about her character thus far. So it is a surprising kind of confession for her to make.
And especially had we had that background of like their friendship since they were 11, it would have maybe made more sense. But we don't have that. And so we're missing that piece. So it doesn't make any sense. And we're like, we don't know. Like, did they play basketball all the time together since they were 11? Like, what is this? We're so confused by this, or at least I am. I don't know. And when Q says, like, who pulls this shit on somebody who's getting married in 2 weeks? Like, if somebody came up to me weeks before my wedding or the day of my wedding, like, I know that that's a common trope too, to have somebody come and crash the wedding and break it up and say, no, I've loved you forever. Come away with me. I fucking hate that because I think it's so fucking rude. And I'm just like, no.
This was like peace and love to this movie. There are so many tropes, and that is definitely like this, like, and granted, like, this scene is well done at the end and everything, and there is like a lot to say about it. The tropiness of kind of like the, oh, she's been in love with him all along. Oh no, he's getting married in 2 weeks. What are we gonna do? That it did feel kind of like, yeah, it was like a lot to get this to the finish line.
Yeah. I almost think that it would have made more sense had he not been engaged.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
More reasons it should have been a series. So I'm going to comment on your comment, Kenzie, that it doesn't really make sense that she doesn't love basketball because he was missing. For me, from my point of view, I feel like it does kind of make sense a bit because at all of her games, could see her watching him from, like, she was always paying attention to him, whether he was watching or every time he left, she always made notice of it. And then also when they're little and he tells her that he's never met a girl that can play basketball or where she learned or something like that, she was just like, I don't know, I just can. And so it wasn't like an answer like, oh, I love basketball. Blah, 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 blah. It was just something I'm good at. And so it was almost like she was doing it just because she could, and it was something she was good at. I don't know.
I always remember back to when they first met, and she says, like, I want to wear the number 32, and I want to be like Magic. I want to be the first woman in the NBA. Like, that was her goal from the time that she was 11.
That's true. I'm just trying to make it make sense.
That's okay. I'm sure it does make sense. I feel like there was probably another hour that was wiped in editing.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he tells her, you don't pull shit like that on someone who's about to be married in 2 weeks. So she says, I will play you one-on-one. He says, for what? She says, your heart.
Love that. I really do. Kenzie's having a meltdown, but I'm just like,
I am. I'm like, you don't do that. You don't do that.
Yeah.
If they love you, they love you. They can't like this. No, this is not.
The stakes are so high in this romantic movie.
Somebody's like relationship on you. Like, you just don't do that.
Oh, I love it. He claims that he's moved on, and she says, prove it. She says if she loses, she'll buy him a wedding present. So they play, and she loses.
Mind you, he still has an ACL tear, and so he's got like a knee brace on.
For part of it, then he takes it off angrily when he's doing poorly.
Yeah.
And again, the stakes are very high.
It's wild. And so, like, throughout this whole game process, it's like he's going to win no matter what. Yeah. And then the end, it makes no sense to me. But that's because I'm angry at this.
So as she's walking away after she realizes she's lost, he says, double or nothing. And then they kiss.
They really do.
I want to see how he dropped that to Tyra. Be like, I'm so sorry.
I wanted to see that unfold.
The first thing that I thought too, and I was like, oh no, Tyra Banks is not going to be happy about this.
Oh no,
you thought she could get angry in America's Next Top Model. Just wait until she has to go ahead and cancel.
We were all rooting for you.
Just wait until she has to not get her deposit.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God.
On the catering.
Oh my God.
Everything that she probably set up, because I know for a fact he wasn't doing jack shit about that. So.
No, he seems like a very disinterested fiance. Before we flash forward to the epilogue, I did want to say so I know that everyone has feelings about the ending of this movie in terms of kind of the one-on-one game the song that plays during this scene is the other moment when I had like a gasp and was very excited. The song that plays is Fool of Me by Michelle Ndegeocello. It's from her 1999 album Bitter, which is an incredible album. It's a breakup album though. And I was very surprised to hear that being used in this moment, but I thought it worked very well in this moment.
Because she's breaking up a marriage.
Yeah. But the other thing from this essay, this essay from the Paris Review, the final paragraph is about this scene, and kind of the conceit of the essay at times is about how when Hanif Abdurraqib was young and he saw this film, he didn't like the ending, and his final thought on the ending is, the final one-on-one scene in Love and Basketball gets this right too. The point when the game decidedly gets serious, trash talk replaced with silence, which is then replaced by slow, heavy, methodical breathing, a person leaning their weight against the sturdy tower of another body. Toward the end, when the legs have given whatever it is they could give, there is the turn, to stay upright or to grab onto the waist of someone you are too tired to keep chasing. Now, tell me again about the distance between competition and romance, between rage and necessity. Tell me the exact point where the distance collapses and everything blurs, and for a moment before something new comes into focus. And the too tired to keep chasing and the competition, the contrast between, or the distance between competition and romance is a fascinating way to kind of unpack that specific moment. And it's like they do love each other, but it's like they have been kind of chasing each other this whole time. And so they have this rivalry that they do kind of make a concession to give up on almost in this moment. And so as tropey as the ending of this movie is, I was happy that they got together, even though Quincy is not a likable character.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
My final note is Quincy a sympathetic character? Are we supposed to be happy? I can't
decide. I can't decide. I will say though that I do like the fact that the competition is not with Tyra. Yeah. So often it's women pitted against each other. Women.
Yeah, yeah.
And instead
it's the two of them. Yeah.
It's the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in Team Quincy since they were boyfriend and girlfriend when they were little, and he called her a stupid cow.
Yeah. I think the only redeemable factor of Quincy is that Omar Epps is the person playing Quincy. But beyond that, I got almost nothing. So
yeah. Unfortunately. Alrighty, so we are flashing forward now to a game where it is Monica that is playing, and now she is in the WNBA because now it exists.
Mm-hmm. Women do be playing basketball.
Yeah. And Q and their daughter are courtside cheering her on. And
I think this is where I finally decided to like Q, is that he decided, okay, I can take a step back and support her in her career.
I did like that it was kind of like she was the one who she pursued this, and I don't know what he is doing.
Right.
Aside from being a parent, it was nice to see this be kind of like a story that like the woman is the one who is like lauded at the end.
Right. Yeah. And I love their daughter, their make-believe daughter. She was so cute.
She was adorable. She was a cutie patootie. So any final comments about this?
We've kind of unpacked a lot of the stuff that I had really taken notes on. Yeah, I think that the only other thing that I noticed right away from this movie is I had a thought about how difficult it must be to film a sports movie, especially a basketball movie, because the margin for error with making shots. And I was just kind of like, oh, I bet that's a lot of film or a lot of takes to make sure you get everything. And then is Quincy deserving of a redemption arc at the end? Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I think we did cover everything that I wanted to talk about with this film.
Yeah. I think to your point, Kevin, I think this goes to show that people don't have to be perfect in order to be loved.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of ties that in.
Yeah. just hope that there's growth in both of them.
Well, and I think that we do see that at the very, very end. Like I said, he is courtside and she has gone into the WNBA and he is supporting her in her career and in her career choices. And even the fact that like when she comes back from being overseas, he's like, why are you giving up basketball? And he really hones in on that point. And he's really like, you got to get back to it. I've never seen you not love basketball. Like, this is who you are.
Yeah. Celeste, do you have any final thoughts?
Just on your comment about all of the basketball scenes and all the shots and things like that, I wanted to point out when I was looking up random trivia, I forgot who the producer was, but he wanted actual basketball players to be starred. And it was down to the last two, I believe, between Sine Lathan and an actual WNBA player. And so they were saying how that because Sine, I'll go ahead and get into it really quick. In her interview, she said that her basketball tryout was terrible because she'd never played before. In quotes, it was so embarrassing because literally I didn't know how to dribble and I didn't know how to hold the ball. So it was down to two people, her. And so they ended up putting her in basketball like lessons, and the actual basketball player, they ended up putting her in acting lessons. And so that's because they actually wanted people who knew how to play. So that way, I'm guessing, so that way they didn't have to take so many shots.
The fact that she had never played basketball before is surprising because she it's obviously like kind of the facade of the film and the editing and everything.
Yeah.
But she is very convincing, at least like in the scenes where she's on the court and passing and shooting. So like I definitely thought she had like some kind of background.
Apparently none at all. And she even said it herself. She's like, I am really surprised at how well it looks. She's like, and I'm proud of myself.
The magic of editing, the magic of acting.
Exactly. Alrighty. So to get over to the Bechdel test, it did pass.
May I ask what scene you dub as the scene that passes? Because I put at the top of my notes, does it pass the Bechdel test? Because I'll tell you, I can't watch anything. I can't really do anything now without asking that. And I try to apply it to pop music sometimes, and that doesn't work. But what scene do you say that it passes with?
I thought there was one between her and her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Were they not talking about a boy?
I didn't think they were.
Well, it's definitely when she gets called sloppy seconds.
I guess I hadn't taken the scenes in the locker room into.
Yeah.
I didn't take the scenes in the locker room into consideration. The scene that I thought where it passed was when in 1981 when the moms are talking.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Because it's adjacently about like being married to a basketball player, but it is also not about a man, and it does move the plot forward a little bit.
Yeah, they have that whole conversation about the neighborhood itself.
Yeah.
Then she like cues mom's like, oh, all the years that I've lived next door, I've never seen the inside of this house. And then Monica's mom's like, oh, well, then let's go take the tour.
Yeah.
I thought when she's doing her hair when she's little, I honestly thought they had more of an exchange. I guess not. I thought they did. And so that's kind of what I
Yeah, like she makes a grunt noise and her mom's like, don't give me hate about this dress. Like,
yeah,
you will wear this dress, and they have some kind of
yeah. But so there's a few that pass.
Well, great. That's great. You love to see. You love to hear.
Yes.
So glad to hear about movies where women are not constantly talking about men. Where the world does not revolve around a relationship.
Where female characters are actually developed. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So progressive. Alrighty. So a little trivia. We already got into a couple of them. But the scene where the character Monica is pushed and receives a scar on her chin was actually added because Sine Lathan actually has the scar on her cheek in real life. And it reminded me, Kenzie, of Bend It Like Beckham. the lead actress in that one, she had a scar, like a really big scar on her leg. And she was concerned that it was going to prevent her from getting the role. And the director actually incorporated it into the movie. I thought that was pretty cool.
Love it. Taking on those scars, using them to your benefit.
Those sexy scars, Kenzie.
Or sexy scars.
And then Gina Prince mentioned that in an interview, she saw over 700 people for the part of Monica, from actors to ball players to people who have never acted before in their life. Over 700.
700 people is a lot of people to audition for a movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Vanity.
Yeah.
And this is a time before audition tapes, like self-tapes. So that means you actually get to see over 700 people face to face. That's a lot.
What's the verdict? What do y'all think of this?
Well, I was going to ask you, Kevin, since you're our guest.
So I liked it. It is a product of its time. There are elements that have not aged well. Overall, I think time has been kind enough to it that it was like enjoyable to watch, and I wasn't like too concerned with a lot of the more troubling elements of parts of it. The soundtrack is great. The performances are great. There are things that could be developed more, but it was a good movie. It was dramatic. There's subtle humor. There's romance. There's love. There's basketball. Like, it was like, I did enjoy it, and it was fun to watch it once just to watch it, and then once to take notes on it. So I did I had a good time both times.
So, Kevin, are you saying that in a movie titled Love and Basketball, there's actually love and basketball in it?
I was actually very surprised. I was very surprised when both happened. Like, the basketball happens right away, and you're just kind of like, but where is the love? And then the love happens, and you're like, wow, they did both. I can't believe it.
How revolutionary of them.
Yo, they said it. They said it with their chest. They meant it. And they made it happen.
I love that.
Yeah.
I liked it as well. I liked it quite a bit. I know that we've talked about it, but if I'm not looking at it critically, I could probably watch this a couple other times. I thought it was a wonderful movie, and I'm not really a sports person. Shocker. But it's not so sports heavy that I actually have to pay attention.
That it was nice.
Score.
It's not super. The sports are just kind of tangentially involved.
Yeah. They're like a plot device, but they're not something that you need to know how it works. So that was great. And I will watch anything Omar Epps does. What about you, Celeste?
I liked this movie. It to me, it's a classic because, again, like I said, when I was younger, this movie was poppin'. Everybody loved this movie. I do enjoy the fact that you're still able to enjoy this movie, not being a sports fan, because as we know, I am also not a sports person, as I've clearly stated throughout this movie.
We're obviously very well qualified to do this sort of thing.
And yeah, so I do not agree with the 1 out of 10 rating that this feels like an amateur movie.
Nope.
It doesn't read directorial debut to me at all. I think it was incredibly made. The cast was amazing.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was a treat, and thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this, and I had a wonderful time. So I appreciate you extending the invitation.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much, especially for all the Taylor Swift commentary.
Yes.
I'm so looking forward to your episodes, and I can't wait to listen to them.
Before we sign off, I do want to say, if people want to listen to either of the pods that I do, A Reasonable Day with my best friend, Alyssa Savino, that is available wherever you get your podcasts. There's 15 episodes right now. We're taking the summer off, but we're coming back in October. And then the Anhedonic Headphones podcast is the show that I interview people about music. Mackenzie is going to be a guest in the upcoming season. That is also available in your preferred podcasting platform, and the new season will be in 2024. I am on the social media of Instagram and Twitter at KevyFly. One is where I have cries for help. The other is where I have photos of my dog. And then sometimes there's a convergence of the two. And then Anhedonic Headphones.blogspot.com. My music writing is there. If you like long-winded big pieces about pop music and mental health, say less. I got you covered.
Yes. And we will link all of that in our show notes as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for having me. This was a blast. And like, I just very grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much. Like I said, we happen to have the perfect person on for this episode. So
Thank you.
Wonderful convergence of minds and conversation and off railing.
The best thing about the pod is when you go off the rails.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Caffeinated Flicks. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can follow us on Instagram at Caffeinated Flicks Pod or email us at caffeinatedflicks@gmail.com.
And just like every other podcast, we would love it if you could follow us in your podcasting app and give us a rating or review. Your feedback helps us get better. And if you're enjoying us so far, please tell a friend.
We'll catch you on the flick side.